Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Bethany Rees. Bethany is a transformational voice in building leaders at work and at home. With 18 years in public education as a teacher and administrator, she has been there, gone through that, and has even bought the t-shirt to prove it. She truly has the heart of a teacher to equip and empower parents and professionals, which is why she is sharing those tough lessons learned through her Rocks Before Sand blog, Leadership on the Rocks podcast, online courses, and coaching platforms. Bethany is a lover of Jesus, wife, mom, educator, entrepreneur, and CEO, so she knows what it takes to lead teams, organizations, and a busy family. Bethany and I met at a women's ministry retreat in September and had the opportunity to get to know a little bit about each other and our work and our visions. And since then, I have been so looking forward to this time together. Bethany, thank you so much for joining us on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait to hear even more about your real life story.
Oh, Danielle, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for allowing me to, one, wear stretchy pants and take off my Spanx. It just feels amazing.
Yes. No Spanx allowed here. I'm barely even wearing pants right now.
Man, whenever you give the professional talks, you got to wear those Spanx. So it's nice to be on a platform where it's just like, I can be real.
I can just hide my whole bottom everywhere. Half.
Yeah.
You are real everywhere. But come on, like Spanx, I think this is kind of a rabbit trail, but whatever. I feel like Spanx is way more for me than it is for other people. Like I feel more confident and comfortable when my full body is on a stage if I'm wearing Spanx. I was just in a wedding this last weekend and I chafed so bad from my Spanx from dancing. So I had to go take them off. But at that point, it was already the reception. But during the photos and stuff, I was like, yeah, I'm wearing these Spanx. I feel way more confident, which, that's still being real. It's just like a sucked in version of real.
There you go. Isn't it amazing what we do to get ready to pump ourselves up to present ourselves to others? And speaking of chafing, I mean, honestly, if I had to summarize my whole story in one word, it would be how to get rid of the chafing. It would be chafing.
I love that. How to get rid of the chafing. I'm writing that down.
And
So yes, I can't wait to jump into your story. So just to give you a little bit of the feel for Created Worthy, a lot of podcasts focus on what you do and all of that, which is beautiful and wonderful. But on Created Worthy, we talk about who you are and how you became who you are before we get into all the amazing things that you currently do. So with that, I would love for you to take us back to maybe where you started off in life. Where are you from? And can you paint us a picture of what life was like growing up for you, life was like for you growing up?
I would love to. So, every person kind of goes through their junior high years of trying to figure out who they are, but I can tell you where I'm from. I'm from small town nowhere in Arkansas. Married my high school sweetheart because we weren't related. We had our teeth and we both wore shoes. So, I mean, all good things there.
Yeah. You had all your teeth. I love that.
I know. I'm so proud. Right. No, I joke. I came from a great family, great Christian family. That, we love the outdoors, hunting, fishing, gardening, canning. And so just very, attached to the roots of where our family came from and how we lived a very simple life. And so very, very blessed. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of family drama in there too, especially whenever you get out into the extended family, because, everybody's got, we don't ask in Arkansas whether or not you have crazy people. It's which side they're on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I'm sure most of the time it's both, but different sections of both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you hit the right button on me, sometimes that crazy will come out too. So I try really hard to kind of tuck it back in,
Yeah. Got to put it in the folder.
Absolutely. So, I had a great experience in high school. Again, I married my high school sweetheart. I was married at 19. And so my husband and I kind of raised each other. It's really funny. And I've known him since I was probably 10. And I know that sounds like a, fairy tale or a Hallmark movie, or whatever, but it's really been such a blessing to be with your partner the whole time and to go through a lot of things together. And here's the funny part, we've been married now almost 24 years and we're becoming a lot like each other, which is really weird because
Mm,
we're opposite personalities.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been a fun ride, but I can't wait to share with you kind of where I hit my brick wall. And I think everybody does, or I
Yeah.
shouldn't even say brick wall, where I hit the drowning spot of all that chafing from the sand elements in my life. And that was definitely in my 30s. I'm now, early
Mm,
40s. So
yeah.
can't wait
So
to dive in.
you graduated from high school, got married pretty much right away. Did you go to
Mhm.
college as well, or
Yeah, I
it's
tend to
okay
skip
if you
over
didn't?
that
There's
because
no
I'm
judgment here.
really a professional student.
Okay.
I was in education for 18 years. So my mom, who got married at 17, because that's what we do. She was like, Bethany, you are going to go to college, you are going to get a degree, and you're going to be able to support yourself. And I don't want you to, think that all that you are is a wife. A wife is something, yes, it's
Mm.
wonderful, but you're not just a wife, just a mom. You are a woman. Go out and conquer, and I'm like, oh, I love you, mom. She got her associates in her 40s. And I have my mother on this pedestal. She is a wonderful woman. So
Aw.
went to college. Actually went to, for those of you out there trying to figure it out, I went to 6. So not because I'm super smart and have a bunch of
Okay.
degrees. It was because I tried different places and trying to
You went
figure
to
out your
6 different
finances.
colleges?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Community
Okay.
college, private college, all the colleges, because you're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to pay for this? Well, I don't like these people. I don't really like this town. There was one town I literally left, had a ton of mosquitoes. And so Jason and I were getting married. We're like, hey, let's go back to our community college, live with our parents for the semester, save some money and get married. So
Yeah.
that's how I started my sophomore year, is bouncing around a lot, but doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
C's get degrees. As long as you finish and get that piece of paper, you're employable.
Amen. For sure. For sure. And like you said, like being a learner, being a professional student, I think is actually the most valuable skill that you can develop in college. Like, I know that this is like probably not what the culture would say, but I mean, I was never a great student myself. Through college, I was able to like pick up how to like hack the education system
Mhm.
per se to get enough good grades that I could pass. But like generally speaking, being book smart has never been a strength for me, but learning has been a huge love of mine for my entire life. And I think that that's what I loved about college the most, was just like experiencing different. I went to school online and then I went in person,
Mhm.
and each version of college had very different structure. But for me, I like innately kind of reject structure, but I need it. And so learning how to learn in a
Yes.
structured environment with different structures for different classes, like that gave me so many tools in
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, where like even setting up courses and curriculum and stuff like that, like those aren't skills that they're like, okay, you're going to learn how to set up a course curriculum. Like maybe some programs they have that, but not in
Yeah.
mine. And still, I learned all of those skills from going through a communication program or going
Mhm.
through, persuasion, or all of these different
Right.
college classes. So I actually think it's really cool that you had the opportunity to go to 6 different colleges and have those different experiences. I'm sure that just like the collective wisdom of learning in all
It
those different ways
it was
really
an amazing
probably
experience of
benefited.
finding self. I'm sure, a lot of people,
Yeah.
whenever junior high, you don't know who you are.
No.
You just want to fit in. I don't want to be a standout, but I do want to fit in. And so you're asking all these questions about who you are. And then when you get to college, you're like trying on different versions of yourself because
Right.
there's no one there to say, you have to be like this. So school for me was all about people pleasing. I need to do
Mm,
what I needed to do to get an A or, please my parents or
yeah.
whatever. And that was high school. Well, in college, it's more for me. And again, bouncing around, just trying to figure out, who am I? What do I believe? Who am I going to be? You know, am I going to try to be this stay at home mom with a white picket fence? Turns out that's not who I am at all. But that's the story that was kind of in my head, I think, just from, society or the roles that I've seen in my life. So I wrote this
Right.
story in my head of, this is what my life is going to look like. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have 10 babies in the white picket fence, which is funny because whenever I was really young, like around 10, my hashtag life goal was just to live in a trailer in my parents' front yard. So, you know, it's really funny how I've
I
come
love
along,
it.
but college, I will never forget whenever I don't even remember which college this was in, which is sad, but I remember when my classes started talking about different things. It was like science and history and English. And all of a sudden they like converged and they were talking about the same thing. And I was like, oh, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And that for me changed. And I just feel like I became a true student, a learner. And it wasn't for other people. It wasn't for the grade. It was how to figure out life and what I needed, because I always wanted to see, I love puzzles. And I'm like, there are so many pieces of different contents out there. And I just want to put it together to see the big picture. And that started my path of just being a visionary, I think, of seeing the big picture. Now, all that being said, I'm a big picture person, but I struggle with details. And I have a lot of fun stories to share with you about missing details.
Yeah. Well, tell us. So as you graduate college, we're getting closer now to your 30s. So take
Yes.
us wherever you feel the Lord calling you to in your story.
Oh man. So the 20s are just figuring out, what am I going to do to pay the bills? Who am I? Who are we as a married couple? Lots of fights there. Love my husband. But you're just figuring out, and then you have a little bit of buyer's remorse when you get married. You're like, oh crap, oops. But then you figure out how to communicate and all of those skills that you didn't have. And so you're going to go through lots of ups and downs. So in my 20s, let me just say we had a lot of fun, but here's where like missing the details comes into play. I'm such a big picture person that I really don't pay attention to the smallest of details. So one time we're going to a wedding, don't have kids yet. I've never really traveled again from Podunk nowhere. And we're going to my cousin's wedding in New Jersey. Right. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to have the biggest hair. I had been fit and I was like, yes, I'm going to dance and do all these things. Well, I went and bought all my travel things for the airplane. And I thought I bought travel hairspray, and I even brought my rollers. So I rolled my hair. It's huge. And I took the bathroom so long. My husband's like, hey, I got to get in the bathroom. I'm like, okay, I'll just step outside and I'll do the whole hairspray thing. I didn't buy hairspray. I bought Afro Sheen. And so I had puffed up my hair huge. And because I didn't read the details, I had sprayed this Afro Sheen all over my hair, and it went straight down, super shiny, didn't have time to do anything. And I got made fun of like the whole time because I looked like I had it was just so funny. So details matter.
Details matter. Yes.
Details
I'm
matter.
a very much like looking for the details type of person. My husband and I went to Meow Wolf for the first time last year. Have you ever heard of Meow Wolf?
No, what is that?
It is a wild experience. I will just send you, I'll send you their Instagram page after this, but essentially it's like a out of this world interactive art exhibit that is just a building that has been made into like all of these like trippy things that it's crazy. It's crazy. Like you walk through a washing machine to get into another room. It looks like a whole totally different universe. So, but
it's like Willy
the whole
Wonka-ish.
time we were there, it was really crazy. The whole time we were there, I was like, it's all in the details. He's like, if you say that one more time, I'm leaving.
Oh man, that is awesome. That is awesome.
But yes. So not a super details oriented person, but you saw the big picture.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead.
Oh, just to dive deeper into that, so we started having kids. My husband is I told you we're polar opposites. I'm more of the creative, fun loving. I mean, he's fun loving too, but he's really structured. And so he had this like 5-year plan. We're going to be married 5 years. And then we'll, if we want to have kids, we'll have a kid. So we were married 5 years and we had our first son. And I was teaching at this time, right? Living the story in my head. And then another 5 years later, we had our daughter. So our kids are 5 years apart. And I remember in my 30s, like drowning. How are you supposed to build a career and parent, and be married and be fit and be all these things that, society is supposed to, telling you're supposed to be. And I was like, I can't do this. I was never much of a drinker at all in my 20s or anything like that. But by the time I had my second kid, I was like, I love Jesus, but I drink a little. This is stressful. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just felt pressure from everywhere. And in this time, we had moved from Arkansas to Houston. And I just saw everybody that seemed to have their stuff together, right? We had a bunch of stay-at-home moms. They were all super fit. Come to find out, they're full of Botox and fake stuff. But I didn't know that. I'm just comparing myself to all these other people of where I should be in life by now and what I should be doing. And that was a lot of mental chafing on me and an emotional chafing. It really was. All those little things that don't matter that I cared about, they were chafing me, and I was getting really rubbed raw.
Yes. I love that you're using chafing as your analogy, because it's such a beautiful, like, beautiful. Beautiful is maybe the wrong word, but such a perfect example of like what it feels like. Cause
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure every person who's listened to this has gone through some kind of chafing season. That's part of life.
It is
Um,
true.
but yeah, the way that you explained how it is like you were living the life that you wanted in a lot of the senses in your
Mhm.
20s, and then you hit 30 and you're like, wait a minute, now I'm supposed to be growing in my career and I'm supposed to be doing this and I want to feel like this and I want to look beautiful and I want to be at all of these different things, right? I want to be a good mom, I want to be a good wife, I want to be a good teacher, I want to be a
Mhm.
good um human. I want to take care of
Yes.
my body, like, and it's like, okay, this is so overwhelming. And so it's
Yeah.
that rubbing raw, where
It
all of a
is.
sudden it feels like you can't do anything. Because just like when you are chafing, like in real life, at some point you rub the skin so raw where it hurts to walk.
Yeah.
Like just to stand up
Mhm.
causes pain.
Yeah.
And
You don't
so
want to engage anymore. You just want to
you
be
don't
still.
exactly. So tell us
Yeah.
about that season.
So, somewhere in my 30s, I remember asking my mom and my mother-in-law, who I have a great relationship with, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me the 30s were so hard? And I think, they just come from a different time and a different generation where lots of things aren't talked about. There's lots of, sweeping things in the closet, or maybe just I don't know, not the forward thinking to say, hey, you know what, this is coming in your life. Let me give you a heads up on that. And I think nowadays we're pretty good. And I think social media helps to have these conversations for sure. But we're having these conversations now. And so I just remember crying out to God. And I'm like, I have an amazing husband. I have great kids. We're healthy. God, thank you for all these blessings. Why am I not happy? And it had nothing to do with those people in my life. It had nothing to do with my circumstances, even. It was internal. It was truly the identity. I was trying to be all these things that I thought I was supposed to be. And I was trying to create systems and processes and have the right inputs to get the right
Yeah.
outputs and have the structure and all of these things. And it just hit me that really I was just like a puckered up Protestant butthole that just needed to relax a little bit. And so
I love it.
that's where, it's true. It's like you're in this ocean and the waves are just coming. Maybe you're even waist deep. And when a good wave hits you, it knocks you down and you get sand everywhere you don't want it to be. And you've got this chafing going on, but you also feel like you're drowning. You can't catch your balance. You can't get that back. And you're just like constantly going under, going under. And what God showed me is, Bethany, you're being tossed by the waves of your circumstances to and fro, back and forth. And he said, look up, build your life on the rock, and I am the rock. Stop, get out of the waves of circumstance, get out of the sand, stop building that sandcastle life, and build your life on the rock, which is me. And that moment really came, from reading Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. I've read that story. I've sang that song a million times. It takes the Holy Spirit to truly work in you and through you. And your eyes just open up like never before to something you've probably seen a ton of times. Like I have that story. And I'm like,
Mm.
wow, you're right. I don't have to choose to stay in the waves of circumstance. I can get out of this and build my life and leadership on the rocks. I'm telling you, it felt like 1,000 pounds falling off my body of I'm free to be who God made me to be. And it just opened up a whole nother chapter of my life.
Yeah. So tell me about the like tangible actions that you took to choose to get out of those waves.
Oh,
Because I think like when I hear a story like this, I'm like, it's so beautiful and such an incredible reminder. And also like I definitely feel like I'm still in the waves a little bit. Like I'm wading in the waters.
mhm.
Um but I know that it's never just, well, not never. God does still do miracles, but most of the time his miracles are in little intentional actions, right?
Mhm.
In little doors that he opens or opportunities or downloads, spiritual downloads that he gives us, revelations. Um but tell me for you what it looked like when you had that moment when you felt like you were being tossed in the waves of your circumstances and God was like, "Stop,
Mhm.
Bethany, look up." What did
Um,
that look like? What did
it,
looking up look like for you?
so I get the joy and the privilege of sharing this with you in 2020 hindsight, right? Where I can now see the big picture of how all those puzzle pieces came together. And I can say, hey, here's the big picture. But you got to understand, when you are living your life one puzzle piece at a time, you don't know what's coming. You don't know what that big picture is. All you see is one jagged little puzzle piece of your life with a bunch of different colors. And you have no idea how this is going to tie into anything else. So please, whenever I share these things, don't hear a to-do list. Don't hear if I just follow Bethany's structure, platform, input, whatever. It's none of those things. And it started with, I will never forget this. Through our church, we started the study of experiencing God. And I believe it's by Henry Blackaby. But, my relationship with God was religion. It really was. It was, I know that I need to be a good person, right? I've learned we don't drink, smoke, cuss, and chew, and we don't go with boys that do, kind of thing. And it was very much about just show up, get your perfect attendance little star, memorize some scripture, check, 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 check. It was religion. And this is not any fault of any church that I went to or my parents or anything like that. It's just how I processed. And then going through experiencing God helped me, number one, see God as more of a relationship. And I'm like, whoa, it's more about spending time with him, being more real with him and not checking a box. And so going through that and understanding how to experience God changed my day to day and all those small things, like what you were saying, it is small, small things. I started doing daily Bible study, which I'd never really done before. I knew the Bible stories. I did, read them to my children in those little cutesy books.
Yes.
But I didn't spend time with God. And that was the foundation for everything. So I'm going to pause there and just say,
love it.
That's the foundation for everything, is your relationship with God.
I think that's actually a really foundational piece that is often missed is, and I also love that you're like, hey, don't try to follow my plan, what worked for me. You're like, you have to go develop a relationship with God, really be intentional with your time and relationship with God, because what he's going to call you to is going to be probably very different than what he calls me to, or what he calls you to, or what he calls Sally or Susie or anyone else to. But step one, the foundation is truly built on going to your creator, the one who knows you better than you know yourself, and just saying, like, Lord, I am not enough on my own. So take me to the next place, or show me the next puzzle piece, or open the next opportunity, but just choosing to trust him and coming to that place where, like, you realize you're not enough on your own. Because when you do think that you are enough on your own, you become your own God. And as we know from how history goes and how we've all been there, done that, like, that always leads to destruction. When you think you are your own God, that will lead to destruction ultimately. Even if for a year or two or however long, it's like, oh, it feels good, I'm so confident. But it's not rooted in a foundation that is solid and secure. Your identity is constantly wavering because we aren't the source of if we are the source of our own identity, then we actually don't have a rock in our lives to plug into, to build upon.
That's
so I really love how you said that, and how you also gave that warning of like, hey, I'm telling you this, but like, this is my story and yours is going to be different. So step one, people, develop a relationship with God, build your relationship with God. That is not like, there is no strategic way, structured way to do that in a right, like there is no, like, this is how you do it. I mean, if you are looking for a tangible way to do that, I think we would probably both say, open your Bible.
Yeah.
Maybe
let's read about all those people. God used people of all different shapes, sizes, and backgrounds, right? There were murderers that he used. There were adulterers, prostitutes, fishermen, I mean, you go back and you look and you're like, wow, when you really dig into who God utilizes as his instrument, it helps you die to self a little bit more and say, it's really not about me and my own power, because we're constantly fighting God for control. We're constantly trying to bring God down to our level and just fight him for that control. But then once you say, ooh, you know what? Yeah, I've made a ton of mistakes back there. but you're going to use my story, just like, you, Danielle, God is using your story to build a platform to help us all take off our emotional spanks and find some healing and find out, yes, this is who God created me to be. And just because I made a mistake, Jesus covers that, right? But he's going to utilize that story to help other people that are still there. They're still stuck in those waves. They're drowning. They're being chafed. And it's just another hand saying, girl, sister, been there, done that. Let me help you out,
Yeah.
because
And
of
we
the love
need
of
each
God.
other.
Oh,
Like, I
totally.
think that is a really big part of this too, is like when you really start to stop and look up, it's also looking around. Sometimes that means God's going to call you into a pruning season. Pruning seasons are really hard. They're really challenging. It hurts. You wonder, like, is there anyone out there for me sometimes? Do I have, like, is anyone ever going to understand? There is one source who will always understand, and it will be God. And he knows if having deep, close friendships is a desire of your heart, he's going to bring those people to you the more you seek him. So I think we as humans in general overcomplicate everything, right? And so being able to just be like, hey, like maybe just listening to Created Worthy, there's someone on this show, because I'm very intentional to make sure that the people on the show are approachable, right? Like they are people who are real and have a message on their heart that is to encourage, to inspire, to hold space for. Because just like you said, the kingdom is actually built up of people who look very differently, who have lived very different lives. And that has been my vision for Created Worthy, is like, I want a platform. I felt like the Lord was like, build a platform where anybody and everybody is welcome to come and to share their story and their experience. Because stories are the most powerful, in my opinion, tool of connection.
Yes.
And that is another part of like being able to really stop and reassess and start moving forward in a new way, is like, look around. And sometimes looking around means looking outside of the people who have previously been closest to you, or, sometimes your relationships just have to take that. It doesn't always mean you cut people off, but sometimes they have to, just take a different shape, where you have to go to a MOPS group if you're a mom, or go to a Bible study group, a local Bible study, try in church, or join a recreational sport, just listening to whatever the Lord prompts you to do, to really start looking up and doing something different.
Right. And I think, what we're all seeking is we're seeking permission to feel comfortable in our own skin.
Yes.
Right. And so much of that, you have to die to self. You have to die to comparison. You have to get out of your head. But all of those skill sets really only come through a relationship with Jesus. And think of it this way, right? If you and I went to the eye doctor, you and I both wear glasses, we have different prescriptions, right? God has different sets of lenses he wants to give us all too. He has poured into us, he did not make a mistake when he created us. He gave us different skills, different, opportunities to use our testimony. But that's like a different set of prescriptions. So when you find that relationship with God, and then you just ask him, just sit there humbly and ask, pour into me, pour into me. He's going to start. It's almost like those glasses at I don't even know if I'm saying this right, ophthalmologist or whatever, where they're like, number one, number two, number one, and they start changing all these things. God starts flipping all of those lenses of your eyes, where you start seeing things you never saw before. You start realizing things you never thought. And then you start confessing things that you didn't even know were a sin in your life. And it's just like one reveal after another. And it's not that this is not a process where you get to the end and you're like, thank you, I have the proper prescription for life. I'm good to go, God. Check you later. See you next year when I get my checkup. That's not what it's like. It's like you never reach that. That's the sanctification, right? Salvation is a point in time of, I believe in Jesus. He washes away my sin. My past no longer defines me. Boom, point in time. The sanctification is a process that lasts your entire life until on your deathbed. So for me, that was so important to realize. I've been working so hard to find the right program, to find the right magic pill, to, find the right group or whatever, to have input that equals the output, so that I can do step A, step B, step C, 1, 2, 3, and be done. And then I'll have the perfect life. And then, I was chasing all these things, and it's like chasing after the wind. It's a process that I'm never going to reach. So enjoy it. And let me tell you what that really helped me do. it helped me to stop chasing perfection, stop chasing affirmation, validation, control, the perfect job, the perfect marriage, the perfect kids, the blah, 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 all those things, and just say, I'm never going to reach perfection. Thank you, God, for that revelation. Thank you. It's all about the process. And so help me to enjoy the chaos that is my life. And so, for example, when you're raising small kids, it's going to be chaos. And guess what? When they're teenagers, different kind of chaos. And guess what? When they're adult kids, different kind of chaos, right?
Right.
And so life is always going to be full of that. It's about the process of, God, help me find your joy, your wisdom. Show me in this moment. And man, that was a huge revelation in my mind. Again, I'm giving you the hindsight is 2020 big picture version. The way that I received a lot of that was piece by piece. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know how to use this situation, but I know you will,
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really important thing to highlight here, though, because I think in life, it is really easy to be in a season or even just have a bad day and be like, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. Am I even living in my purpose? What is my calling? And all of a sudden we just have all of these questions that we're thinking about internally, and we're comparing ourselves. Or as much as there are so many gifts and benefits of social media, there's also a real danger, the scroll hole, the comparison trap, all of those things. Like, it's really easy to compare yourself to people, up close, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
seeing more about their lives, and still, as we know, a lot of times, and I do this as well, like, we share the best parts of our lives on social media, because those are those are the memories that we the ones who are posting it want to remember. We
Yeah.
don't want to remember all the hardest times. So it kind of can create this separation within us where we are feeling maybe unaligned or whatever. And having someone like you just be like, hey, it's a process, like, there are going to be days. And I'm sure, like, if we're perfectly honest here, there are still days where you're like, am I doing what I am meant to do? Am I eating right? Am I on the right diet plan? Am I drinking enough water? Am I going to the gym enough? Am I being a good enough mom? Like,
Yeah.
that's all part of the process. But I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is it's actually when we begin to accept that process is life, right? Like,
Yeah.
there is no end goal of perfection, because
Mhm.
perfection is only found within Christ, and we are
Yeah.
never going to be perfect, but we actually begin to go through the internal process of accepting that we
Mhm.
begin to experience things like joy and gratitude and peace and freedom and the things that
Yes.
are readily available to us. But we get in our own ways so much of the time because we're like, well,
Yeah.
what if, all of the different questions that come up.
Yeah. We
Um,
got to get out of our head,
yeah.
And I heard you say, the internal, that really makes me think of, and you probably learned this in English class whenever you're talking about authors and analyzing books. Forgive me. Again, I come from the education world. And so,
No, don't.
but this is
We don't
how,
need to
this is,
forgive you.
but,
We love your education talk.
oh, thank you. This is how the world is connected. You learn about how authors write stories, and they really want you to follow a character, right? So you become, enamored with this character that has all these character traits or however they write them, but then they're going to have an external problem. And so you're like, oh, that's an external problem that they really have to solve, right? Let's go with Hallmark and Christmas or whatever, all those movies that are the same script, right? There's
Yeah.
an external problem. We're going to lose the bakery. But then it sparks really an internal problem of, I think this way about myself, or I have a fixed mindset, or I don't know who I am, or I struggle with my identity, or whatever that is. But then it also creates a philosophical problem of, is this all there is to life? God, is this what you have for me? And it's like, for the most part, we stay so busy. I heard a preacher one time say, if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy.
Mm,
We're so busy that we stay surface level with that external problem. Think about our marriages or our relationships or at work. We're like, oh, if I just had more time to check my email, then I wouldn't feel so stressed. It's external. And we don't ever get to the internal, and we definitely don't ever get to the philosophical, where we're fixing our relationship with God. So you got to do the work of get out of your head, spend time with God. The Holy Spirit will reveal all
mm,
those levels and layers of your stinky onion to
yeah.
figure that out. And we got to do that. We got to do a better job of spending time with Jesus.
I love that. So,
Yeah.
Bethany, I would really love for you to take us back to your story
Yes.
and So you're in your 30s, you have these revelations, you realize that accepting the process and the fact that perfection is not the end goal that's where you're at.
Yeah.
How
So,
do you get to where you're at now?
ooh, a lot of weight gain, I'll tell you that.
Same, girl. Up, down, all around.
Yeah, all around. Going back to what I was just saying, external, internal, philosophical. I mean, those are the hindsights that I have now, but I was really questioning God. I love being in education. I love serving students and serving teachers. And by this point in my career, I'm an instructional coach. So I'm mainly working with teachers on how to teach students. And other women started opening up to me, because we had the relationship about I'm struggling with this, or I'd go in and a teacher was having a bad day. And I would, during our conference period say, hey, are you okay? And lo and behold, it had nothing to do with education. Her and her husband got in a fight or, whatever. And it really started opening my eyes because people were vulnerable. And I will always be so appreciative of that to share their stories that I'm like, number one, I'm not alone in all of the struggle and the mess that I'm going through. But then two, God, you've given me these relationships. What do you want me to do with it? So God started changing my brain to that external of just how I'm going to look at things and how I'm going to solve the problem, and to stop and say, God, help me. What's the next move? It just slowed me down. It helped me get out of my head of thoughts, to not tell myself a story, to not go forward, try to control everything or try to fix the problem, but just say, God, how can I be used? And in the beginning, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm fumbling around. I made lots of mistakes, and you're going to learn from, all those conflicts that went bad because I didn't know how to handle it. Yeah. God has turned those into lessons learned for me. But so in my 30s, I went from transitioning from serving teachers as an instructional coach to becoming an administrator. And please understand, most of my life, again, I know how to play the game of school. I love being a student. I love achieving. I love people pleasing. And when you're an administrator, it's so different. I opened up a brand new high school. So there's everything from hiring hundreds of people to starting all of the athletic programs and all the academic programs and hiring hundreds of staff. And I really felt like I hit this massive point in my life where nobody liked me. And I was like, but I'm likable. I have such a big heart. I want to serve. But, well, why don't you serve? Why don't you have this class? Or, this kid is going to get a 0 because they caught cheating, and then you're being cussed out by parents. I got cussed out over, I just can't even tell you all kinds of things. I got called some of the worst names. And yes, this is not a huge percentage of the public that treats educators this way. It's a small percent, but still it hurts. It's whenever you're being cursed out at your job. And so through a lot of that conflict and teachers getting into it, or, just unfunded mandates, all the stress that I felt like I was carrying. And I'm like, but God, I have a heart. I know you put me here for a reason. And what he taught me in that season of my life of just not being liked. And I now joke, I'm like, guys, really, I'm like a size 2. This is just thick skin, you see, from all of those circumstances. Yeah. He has utilized every single hardship. I remember so vividly the first time that our school suffered a student suicide. It ripped me apart in so many ways. And I was over the counselors, and we're coming up with a game plan of how do we serve our students, our teachers. And it just ripped me apart. So from everything, from the worst possible thing you can imagine of suicide to physical fights to parents yelling, I went through like all of those situations in such a short amount of time. And God taught me, again, through a lot of prayer, through a lot of quiet time with him. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning just to pray and say, God, I can't make it through this day. I don't know what's going to hit me. I don't know what kind of conflict I'm going to have. So, from 4:30 to 5:30, it was time with God. And he showed me, number one, Bethany, this is image management that you struggle with. You think everything is a reflection of you, and it's not. And so stop carrying the weight of trying to showcase a polished, perfect front of a school, right? I'm an administrator. So imagine what parents are saying online about, or social media about school and about the teachers, this teacher, that teacher, this situation, that situation. I took it so personal because it was me trying to control the image of, no, but we have the right heart, but we're going this way. It's going to be amazing. And learning that lesson of image management and the whole get out of your head, release it about me, released so many other things. But it wouldn't have happened, one, if I didn't have the hardship. We don't grow in our faith. We don't grow in our revelations about ourselves without the hardship. You got to have the hardship. And it stinks. Nobody wants to go through it. I worked so many hours. I had to go to all those events. I had to throw a dude out of a guy, as a man, out of a theater event because he brought a Crocodile Dundee knife. And I was like scared to death. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, no giant knives here. Machetes not allowed.
But without those hardships, you don't learn what you're made of. You don't learn how much you need God. So it's just changed. He gave me another prescription lens, right? Hey, here's the reason I put you through this, because if I don't, you're going to think you can do it all yourself. Right.
Right.
So that's my story of just where I'm at. I have become comfortable in my own skin. Yes, I am overweight. Yes, I struggle with perfectionism. Yes, I struggle with all these things, but God, you are continuing to move and work in my life. And I'm so appreciative. And I've never felt more comfortable at the age of 43 in my own skin than I do right now.
That is such a testimony. I love that. So are you still teaching?
I am not. And so after the pandemic, I was administrator through the pandemic. Let me tell you, that was fun times. Dealing with the anxiety of all society. Yeah.
Yeah.
But after that, it was a lot of prayer. And I could have probably stayed in education one more year, but my husband and I were also transitioning to move. I was an administrator in a school district outside of Houston, Texas at that point. And we knew we were going to be moving. And so I'm like, I really feel like God has downloaded and revealed to me all these lessons from my own story of hardship, perfectionism, of dealing with some of the hardest people in public and yet learning how to love them anyway. And it's not just meant for me. And, all I know is school. All I know is education. I don't know what I'm doing. I definitely don't know anything about business. But as I was preparing for that transition, I felt like, Bethany, go out and teach people about your stories, or just share, not even teach, but share. Number one, be vulnerable. Don't be so polished. But two, help people grow in leadership. And that's really, and if I had to summarize it, I would say it this way. I got so ticked off at the fakeness of society and the expectations, the lack of communication. And really it boils down to the lack of leadership in our homes, in our schools, and in society in general, that God's like, go out there and help people understand how to build their life and leadership on the rock. Just like that whole lesson that I've been teaching you all this time. Get out of the waves of circumstance, get out of the sand elements of life, and guys, start building your life on the most essential rocks, with rock number one being me. I'm like, okay, God, I don't know how to do that.
Well, he's showed you, right?
One tiny step at a time. It's so scary.
One tiny step. It is scary, but it is like you just said, like it is all a process, and one obedient step leads to another obedient step and another one. And it's like, it's always those first couple of steps that are the hardest. And then sometimes we take a few steps back, and then it's like, again, it's hard because you got to take that first step forward again.
Yeah.
But every step forward makes obedience a little bit easier, because God reveals to you that his plan is actually, in fact, better than your plan. And he does it pretty quickly. Once you start saying yes and you are like, okay, God, I'm going to do this thing. He's like, okay, I'm going to plant you in the middle of a bunch of women who I've called to do something also similar.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you that every one of you has a unique gift and skill set that can actually benefit you personally and you collectively and the world collectively. And then you gain motivation from that, and you just keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. And it becomes a little bit more fun and a little less stressful. And then you might take a step back, and then it's just all part of that process. Right. And I just want to say, I think you're doing an incredible job. I love listening to your podcast. So yeah, can you tell us now a little bit about what you're doing? What does your life and ministry look like now?
It is ever evolving, and God has given me big vision that's very scary. But he's walking me through the day to day. What do I do today? I've never been my own boss before, so this is crazy. But ultimately, it's all a platform of how to build your life and leadership on the essential rocks, with the most essential rock being Jesus. And so I felt called again to speak into multiple areas. So, number one, I started a blog. It's called Rocks Before Sand. So, you can find it at rocksbeforesand.com. And I just started sharing stories. So, in there, you're going to read a ton of stories about marriage things that went bad, big family things that went bad, parenting events that went bad. And it's just me sharing stories of, oh, there's always a lesson to be learned of, here's what happened, here's what God showed me, and here's how I'm growing from it. So it's very faith and family focused. But I started that blog first. And, as God was crafting this vision for me with leadership, again, I just kept going back to Matthew chapter 7, hear my words, build your life on the rock. And so I started leadership on the rocks. And again, I don't know how to blog. I don't know how to podcast. God will, once he calls you, he's going to equip you. I don't have these skill sets, but he's slowly teaching me and learning me or connecting me with people that can show me these skills. And so on the podcast, it is focused on leadership. And we do talk a little bit about leadership in the home, but for the most part, it's leadership with the work. Because here's the deal. Whenever you're growing in leadership, and leadership does not have to be a specific title, because you influence someone. So your organization will give you the title, the pay, and the people, but they won't necessarily equip you in how to lead. And so that's what that podcast is about. It's about how do we equip leaders to build their leadership on the essential rocks. And so that's what we talk about. I bring people on that are a lot smarter than me, and they share their wisdom about leadership, but it's all about growing our skills. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I also have an online course for new leaders who are stepping into leadership and they're like, oh dear, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, here's a survival guide on how to lead. All the things that I learned the tough way, the wrong way, and the lessons that I've learned. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's been fun. It's been so revealing in how good God is to use our stories and our testimony. Without going through all those hardships, I would have no lessons to share. I wouldn't have stories to share with others.
I love that, Bethany. That is so wonderful. I can't wait to continue watching what the Lord does with you in this ministry and this vision he's put on your heart. I have been so encouraged personally in my leadership journey just from reading your blog and listening to your podcast. And I'm super excited for my listeners to also be able to join you, follow along. Now, before we share all the places that they can follow along with you, I have to talk about creative processing because creative processing is amazing. And a lot of what you said, I was like, sounds like she did some creative processing. Sounds like she did some creative processing. So that's like my favorite part about creative processing is that it's not something that you have to figure out how to do necessarily. It's something that you're already doing. But then when you learn how to do it with intention or you use it as a conscious thought, then you're actually able to tap into the joy, the peace, the gratitude, the freedom that is always available to us through Jesus at any time, at any moment. So I asked what your primary creative processing method is, and you said music, which that's one of my top ones too.
Absolutely.
So just to give you an example of how this would be used in action, it would be, I recommend using the prompt, the purpose of, and we'll just use yours as an example, listening to worship is to process receiving peace from the Lord. So it's pairing your creative, any creative method, whether that's listening to music or cleaning, or some people make spreadsheets, some people like to redecorate their house. There's all kinds of ways that we can activate our creative minds. When we pair that with intention, then we're actually able to receive that intention or achieve that intention because we have set our mind to it. And that's how the Lord has created us. He's created us to be creative, right? He is a creative God. We are creative beings. So when we use our creativity, it is actually an innate gift He's given us to help us receive the blessings that He has for us. So that is my little soapbox about creative processing. But yeah, I would just encourage you when you're listening to whatever kind of music, Ed Sheeran, when I'm listening to Ed Sheeran, I'm usually processing like either a painful relationship from the past, or I'm processing a marriage, something to do with my marriage. His music's very romantic. So
it is.
always have that. But There's
I
all
love
kind of
everything
any
about his music except for the fact that he says can't in one of his songs. I don't remember what song that
what?
is. He can't. He said can't. Excuse me. I
Oh.
even said it wrong. English. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That is so funny.
Oh yeah.
That is
But
so
the
funny.
way that he says it, it's like I can't, whatever
Yeah.
is in his accent,
Yeah, in his accent, you can hear his accent. That
Yeah.
is interesting. You're gonna have to send me that song because now I'm
Oh,
super interested. But yeah, just pairing whenever you go into any kind of creative activity, whether that is writing or anything, just try to pair it with an intention and see what happens. Because my guess and what the record has proven is that it actually just allows us to really be more intentional and to receive that the end goal that we're looking for. Obviously, we can't receive perfection, so I would never recommend that you set your intention to be perfect.
right.
But I would say maybe you set your intention to process imperfection.
Ah,
Sometimes on
so
Mother's
good.
Day, I one Mother's Day I painted to process my pain from Mother's Day because I have a really hard relationship with my mom. And so, and at that was the most healing day I'd ever had. I think that for me was like a huge step forward in my growth and in my healing
Mhm.
with that relationship. And I truly believe that this is just a gift from the Lord, that our creativity is a gift from the Lord. And that's kind of what he put on my heart was go and share about how much of a gift creativity is.
Ah,
And creative process, right? The creative
yeah.
process we're all familiar with is always leads to an external result, but creative processing leads to an internal result.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm
And,
here to do
you
is
know,
help connect the
I
dots.
love it. I love it.
Yes.
And that whole process, I mean, it goes so deep. It's like the bamboo tree. It goes 5 years deep of deep,
Yeah.
deep roots of fixing and growing strong roots so that you can shoot up and then, be something for other people to use. So it's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. So before we wrap up, how can listeners best find and connect with you?
Awesome. Well, the podcast is called Leadership on the Rocks. It's got a cute little whiskey glass because, hey, who doesn't love a good pun, right? And so feel free to follow and listen there, like and subscribe or whatever platform you're on. But there's also leadershipontherocks.com, and that's where you can have access to, I have tons of free resources if you're struggling in leadership and want some, checklists and agendas and free things like that. But I also have an online course, the Leadership on the Rocks Survival Guide. It's how to survive in leadership and not lose yourself in the process. And then I also do coaching and corporate trainings as well. But then my blog, again, this is Faith and Family, is rocksbeforesand.com. And that's the blog. You can sign up there. But on social media, I'm known on both handles, Leadership on the Rocks on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. But with the blog, it's Rocks B4, the letter B and the number 4, Rocks B4 Sand. So
I
that's where you
love
can
it.
find me.
Yay. Well, Bethany, I am so grateful to have spent some time with you here today and for your courage and vulnerability to share your story. Keep being the bold teacher and courageous life liver that you are, because you are changing lives just simply by being yourself as you are right now. You are an inspiration and spread so much joy to all those around you, all while bringing others closer to Christ in a real and relatable way. You, my friend, are created worthy.